And our next presenters, their books are the power of 5, but they are the power of 2. So I call this Dr. David and dynamic Melissa Bernstein. So they co-authored a book, The Power of 5, A Journey for Health, Longevity, and Wellness. And I don't need to go into the whole spiel because they're really good at talking about all that stuff. So welcome, my friends.
Welcome. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you? You're doing great. We are so proud of you. This is awesome.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Well, we are just really excited to be here today. And Linda, what's that?
We're going to share the screen.
Oh, share my screen. Hold on a second. Not yet. I'll just share my screen. Let me just share my screen here for some reason.
Let me just ask my producer.
Yeah. Okay.
Got it?
Share.
It's there. You have the capability. Oh, here. Is it coming up now?
Can you see now?
Yeah.
You see, okay.
Yep.
You see my slides?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay. So, Linda, I have some questions. I'm a question kind of girl. So I have a question for you, lots of questions for you in the audience. What is wrong with reducing caregiver frustration, fatigue, stress, or even burnout? What's wrong with individuals with neurodegenerative disease eating brain healthy meals? What's wrong with promoting purposeful engagement and pure enjoyment through cooking and eating? Have you run out of caregiver ideas for purposeful activities for your care recipients? We are here to address these burning questions. Welcome to the Power of 5 for Life and Purposeful Engagement in the Kitchen. I'm Melissa Bernstein. I'll be addressing these and many other challenges caregivers face every day. But first, I want to turn over the virtual podium to my husband, Dr. David Bernstein. He will be setting the table for me by addressing why everyone in this audience today needs to understand the importance of self-care, health, aging well, and how this relates to successful caregiving. Take it away, Dr. B.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa. Get all my props together here. Thank you, Melissa. I can't wait to hear what you have to say about promoting purposeful engagement and finding out which of your delicious recipes you're going to share today. Linda, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Did you ever play with silly putty as a child?
Heck yes.
Yeah, well, it's no surprise because everyone in our generation did. Silly putty was invented in 1943, so that we all played with silly putty when we were kids. And this conference is all about silly putty, as my camera is being adjusted.
Yeah.
We don't want to cut off my head.
No.
Maybe that's better. This conference is all about silly putty. It's about silly putty because silly putty is resilient. And this conference is all about helping caregivers develop or maintain their resilience. In fact, if I remember to incorporate it, some comments about my first book, I've got some good news and some bad news, you're old. That's really about resilience too. But I want to talk about silly putty and caregivers because silly putty and caregivers have a lot in common. You see, silly putty can bounce. It's hard to make it bounce on virtual screen, but it can stretch and it can snap. And we all know that if you put it on a newsprint, you can copy a cartoon on the back of it. And then the one main difference between Silly Putty and Caregivers is that Silly Putty, at the end of the day, you can put back in its egg-shaped container and you can use it again. That's resilience. The problem is caregivers cannot retreat into an egg-shaped container and they have to bounce back and face the next day. So successful aging and caregiving does require resilience. Resilience of the people requiring care, of our healthcare system, various levels of healthcare providers, including, and most importantly, caregivers. So there really is a perfect storm that's developing, and this perfect storm is one of impending chaos, because as people become older and more frail, things become more chaotic. And I believe that resilience is really the backbone for the survival of our species. And for now, our caregivers are in this storm of chaos that's approaching. So I'm going to say a few words about resilience. And here's how to pronounce it. It's a noun. And resilience, the definition I use is from psychologists who say that resilience is the process of adapting well in the face of adversity, trauma, tragedy, threats, or significant sources of stress, such as family and relationship problems, serious health problems, or workplace problems, or financial stressors. That doesn't differ very much from the definition that Kate used a little while ago in her presentation. One of the things that I want to talk about in terms of resilience is that it's important because it impacts us in a lot of ways. Because resilience is important because it affects the quality of care. And if we're resilient and a quality of care stands up, we reduce errors by providers, and providers would be care providers as well as physicians. It impacts the quality of caring, resulting in more empathy, improved patient engagement, and patient satisfaction. And it impacts sustenance of the healthcare workforce, leading to reduced burnout, increased engagement, improved satisfaction, and less attrition. I want to digress for a minute and talk about something that happened relative to the first book I wrote. I wrote about the fact that I observed in my older patients that they had 5 traits that led to the longer, healthier lives. And those traits were having goals or a purpose in life, having good roots or DNA, which would be roots in the ground like a tree or family tree, having a positive attitude and having gratitude, having companionship, and interacting well with the environment. And we're going to talk about those things a little bit. But I was at a conference, a geriatric conference, and I was at a poster presentation, and I was reading this research that was being done on this concept of resilience that was being talked about. This is 4 or 5 years ago. And I spoke to the authors of the study, and they said, well, we included people who had goals or a purpose, and what their DNA was and what their attitude was and their companionship. So resilience is also about grace, goals, roots, attitude, companionship, and environment. And so I thought it was really quite fascinating. And when I think of resilience, I think of these 2 pictures. One is a National Geographic magazine cover from the 1970s, and the other is a Galapagos tortoise. So who am I? I'm David Bernstein, and I made a decision to study aging and eventually become a geriatrician and focus on preventive care and longevity at the age of 17, after reading the National Geographic article associated with the cover picture I just showed. I was additionally influenced by my mother's struggle with the medical care provided to her parents, my grandparents, late in their lives. My grandparents lived until their late 80s and had several characteristics that were associated with longevity. They were resilient too. When I graduated from high school, I made a commitment to myself that in addition to becoming a physician, that I would become a public speaker and an author. in 2012, I published my first book. I've got some good news and some bad news. You're old. Tales of a Geriatrician, which is based on my observations that I just discussed of individuals who live long, healthy lives. And they demonstrated the traits that I referred to by the acronym GRACE. My other book, The Power of Five, is similarly associated with strategies that promote longevity. And I'm going to provide information about them during my presentation today. As part of my introduction, I do want to share my mission statement that my wife and I follow in life. And it reads, just because we retired, we are not putting our combined 80+ years of experience, knowledge, and skills on a shelf. We want to remain active and engaged, giving back to the communities that we served for many years, sharing what we know to make the lives of others, young and old, better. We are taking a road less traveled by typical retirees with gratitude and meaning every day. So,
Amen.
that's what we are about, and that's why we're here today. I want to talk about what I've discovered about the conditions that I encountered in my medical practice and how these discoveries related to aging individuals and caretakers. So medical scientists observed that there was a susceptibility to frailty. And frailty is a really big word today, and I'm including it in my talk because it's who we're caring for these days, people who are frail. And it's enhanced by different and morbidity and mortality is increased in individuals who have particular medical problems. The questions that I ask are, is there anything we can do to lessen the risk of becoming more frail and simultaneously the consequences of caregiver burden? And then another question to ask is, what are the medical conditions that put us at risk? How do they lead to frailty? And what do they have in common? And how can we avoid the perfect storm of fragility that aging and caregivers are threatened with? And so I'm going to be explaining those in the next few minutes. And so the slide that you have before you includes these risks for aging and fragility. And one of the interesting things about this slide is that I used it also because these are similar risk factors for having a poor outcome if you get the COVID virus. So they kind of go hand in hand. Frail people with chronic medical conditions are more susceptible to aging, frailty, and even a bad outcome from a virus like the COVID virus. So there are things like diabetes, obesity, coronary artery disease, diminished immune function, liver disease, and kidney disease. So what is the underlying thread in all of this? That's really what I wanted to discover as I worked on my book, The Power of Five. And what I found is the one common thread through all of this was systemic inflammation. Now, people ask, what is this systemic inflammation? Well, let me give you two different examples. There's acute inflammation. That would be like an acute infection, or I like to use the description like a splinter. And you get a splinter in your finger and your body says, there's an intruder, get that thing out of here. And it sends all kinds of inflammatory protective cells and nutrients into the area to extinguish the effect of the splinter. You remove the splinter, the infection's gone, the inflammation's gone. But the conditions that are listed on the screen and some others that I'm going to show you in a minute all cause this chronic, underlying, unremitting inflammatory process. And that inflammatory process is the thing that gives rise to health problems and fragility. The whole purpose of my discussion today is what can you do to avoid that? So let's talk a little bit about the most common causes of illness in the United States and the world and developing countries. Well, number one is cardiovascular disease. Number two is cancer. And number 3 is neurodegenerative disease. And those of us in this audience and participating in this conference today, if we're doing caregiving, we're probably caregiving to someone with 1, 2, or all 3 of these medical conditions. And just to be clear, neurodegenerative disease includes dementias of all types, including Alzheimer's and Lewy bodies and multivascular dementia and Parkinson's disease and other neurodegenerative diseases that make it a person weaker and more frail. And as I said a few minutes ago, the common thread through all those illnesses is inflammation. And so whatever it is that's causing this inflammation, we need to look at what we can do, because that's fueling this acceleration in aging, the thing we want to avoid. And inflammation is basically the equivalent of frailty. And we all know frailty is someone who has difficulty getting out of a chair, getting out of bed, has general weakness and malaise. And so that's the thing we want to prevent in this whole process. So I'm going to quickly run through the things that create inflammation and go into greater detail. And what you're going to find is a trend here, that all of the words that I use to describe inflammation begin with the letter S. And there's going to be 5 words that begin with the letter S. So be ready for them. Number 1. Number 2, I limited my list to 5 because most people can remember 5 things. And so these 5 things are going to be repeated, and they're going to be the things that you might want to work on every day to reduce your risk for this inflammatory process, fragility, and aging that I just mentioned. So sweets is the first one, and that's really about what you eat. And we eat too many sweets in this country. The second is stress. We've heard about stress in the discussion just prior in terms of that's contributed to this inflammatory process. And I didn't mention it about sugar, but sugar causes inflammation, but so does stress. And chronic unremitting stress causes an increase in cortisol levels, which increases blood pressure and causes vascular disease. And then there's sweat. Well, sweat is really about exercise in my book, and we'll talk about that. And sleep, or lack thereof, or diminished sleep, or disturbed quality of sleep is important. And the 5th one is sex. I include sex in my discussion because when I was growing up in the 1970s and 80s, all I knew was that sex sells, and I wanted to sell and get people interested in things. But sex is about intimacy, but it's also about socialization and connections. And we've heard throughout the conference so far that connections, socialization is an imperative and important part of what we can do to reduce our risk for dementia and aging in this inflammatory process. So let me talk a little bit more about each of these items. The first is sweets. In this country, we eat a horrible standard American diet. Sometimes I call it a sad diet. And that diet, with lots of sugar, too much sugar, too much carbohydrates, creates this inflammatory reaction in our body and in our brains. Some people even refer to dementia as type 3 diabetes because the brain doesn't process sugar very well. And I'm getting off on a tangent here, but when people talk about the keto diet, it's not a diet that I really endorse and recommend. But one of the things that's interesting about it, it is very low in carbohydrates and very low in sugar. And that's a favorable thing for a brain. I just think one has to meld it and do it properly with fresh fruits and vegetables and a Mediterranean or plant-based diet that would be favorable for brain. Stress. We know about stress, and for caregivers, stress is in some ways unavoidable. If you are having problems on a job, you can leave your job. And I'd recommend that if you need to, but you can't remove yourself from the caregiver situation that you may be in. So the idea, and Kate just alluded to it in the previous presentation, is about what you can do about that. There's meditation, there's mindfulness, there are all kinds of apps that are available on your phone, but there's also yoga, Tai Chi, relaxation response, and good meditation techniques can be very helpful for that. And then there's sweat. Sweat is my euphemism for exercise, or for people who are at risk, it's not getting enough sweat. But exercise requires 30 minutes of activity 5 days a week. That's the sweet spot. That's where you'll start getting benefits. And it's not so hard. And I'll talk about that, what you can do in a minute. And then there's sleep. In the last 20 years, particularly in the last 20 years in my practice, I noticed how sleep was having such a negative effect on my patients. There is a large quantity of adult Americans who are overweight, and those overweight individuals certainly could be suffering from sleep apnea, which has a significant impact on inflammation and has a significantly bad impact on our brains, because the brain uses sleep to rid itself of byproducts of metabolism that happens during the day, and it rids itself at night. And if you're not getting that sleep, you're not ridding yourself of the waste products in your brain, and that clearly has negative effects. And those people who are doing caretaking know that their care recipient will have a much better day if they get a better night's sleep, and so will the caretakers. And I'll digress for another minute and say, this presentation is about two people. It's about the caregiver, because caregivers have to maintain their health in order to provide health support to the care recipient. And the care recipients, particularly with the diseases that I mentioned a few minutes ago, will all benefit from the recommendations from the Power of Five. And so the last of the five, and my favorite, of course, is sex. It's about intimacy. In a dementia or caregiving arrangement, if it's your spouse, it's about touch. It's about other ways other than sex to have this level of intimacy. But beyond that, it's also about socialization. It's incorporating family and friends into your world, into your sphere of influence, because that has significant favorable effects. It's been studied and proven, and it has an improved impact on inflammation. So I want to reiterate the frailty inflammation connection, because it's important to recognize that it's important because it helps to maintain independence of both the care recipient and the care provider. It avoids frailty in the care provider, as I just mentioned, and it has the potential of improving the quality of life for both the caregiver and the care recipient. So I'm going to briefly go through the things that a person can do for each one of these five items to make their health and reduce their inflammation. So first is sweets. I recommend reduce sweets, particularly sugar. A sugar fast for patients with dementia can have a significant impact on them. Reducing carbohydrates, and definitely reducing processed foods. There's more and more research about the negative impact processed foods have on our vascular system and our brains. And substitute with healthier foods. A Mediterranean diet is acceptable and it's accessible. My wife and I practice a plant-based diet, which is a little bit more difficult, but certainly the healthier you eat, the better, and the lower amount of sweets. Avoid stress. Find relief valves. Have a companion or hire an additional caregiver to get relief. And I heard about respite yesterday. Getting respite can be extremely beneficial. Learn meditation techniques, relaxation response, yoga, Tai Chi. Those are some of the things that can be beneficial. And before the pandemic, my wife and I participated in Tai Chi. And one of the things that was really beneficial about it, there was always a break in the physical part of Tai Chi for socialization time. So people could network and get together, because that's part of what makes us human. Now, let's talk a little bit about sweat. I mentioned 30 minutes, 5 days a week is a minimum amount that can be very beneficial to anybody. It has to be fun, because if I tell you to go get dumbbells and you don't like dumbbells, that won't work. Or if I tell you to go swimming and you don't like water and don't like cold stuff, that won't work. But find something. Walking is free. There's a street outside your house or a sidewalk or a park you can go to for 30 minutes. And it's a good opportunity to clear your brain as well. And sleep. Sleep is incredibly important. I saw this in the last 20 years of my practice of how many people were deprived or had inadequate sleep or interrupted sleep. And we know as caregivers, you always have one eye on your care recipient if you're in the same room or in the same house, and that can be disruptive. It might even mean the two of you have to adjust your cycles, and you know who you have to adjust your cycle to, but it may require going to bed earlier, because if your care recipient goes to bed at 9 and you go to bed at midnight and the care recipient is up at 3 in the morning, that doesn't work very well. And remember that the bedroom is for sleep and sex, and only those two things. So no TV, no eating, no computer games, no telephone conversations, and even start a wind down before you go to sleep, because that can be incredibly effective in getting a good night's sleep. And then sex. Set up a plan for satisfying the need for intimacy. There's maybe a mismatch. I think we heard about that yesterday, in terms of what people's needs are and what people's desires are and how you can get that to match. But intimacy might be just about holding hands and touching, and holding hands while watching television, and socialization with other people and finding companionship. And I think Kate mentioned that a little while ago about getting together with other people, family, friends, and even doing things by Zoom. I also want to mention the fact that the opposite of intimacy is loneliness. And loneliness is a health hazard in this country, in this world now, for lots of different reasons, some of which is the fact that families have been more fragmented, some are estranged, multiple marriages, but also that children may be out on a different coast than the parents, and it becomes more and more difficult. So there is a need to work on the process of socialization, make friends, join groups, even support groups that we heard about in a session yesterday can be really helpful. So here's a schematic of the 5 things for the power of 5 that will enhance your life and reduce your frailty and inflammation. And now it's time to take charge of your power of 5. It takes intention. It takes my wife, Melissa, being on the screen next to me in just a minute to continue her presentation. And I have some comments about that, because now I'm going to turn the presentation back to Melissa. She's just reintroduced herself here. Melissa, she's going to introduce you to her program to provide purposeful and meaningful engagement in the kitchen between caregivers and care recipients. So Melissa, take it away.
Okay, hello everyone again. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. B. And let me get to where I need to be here. So I'm going to show you the video that is the instructional companion to the Power of 5 Test Kitchen Cookbook that I designed specifically for caregivers to feel comfortable bringing a person with neurodegenerative disease such as dementia, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's disease, and other like conditions into the kitchen. The program provides helpful guided tools to engage purposeful activity that combines food and cooking. In addition, the program promotes past reminiscence, mind-body connection, and encourages adding music or dancing to enhance a cooking and dining experience. I invite you to our Power of 5 Test Kitchen, where I will demonstrate exactly how I integrated food and cooking with purpose for caregivers. Let's take a look. Here we go. We good?
Welcome, caregivers. Persons who have neurodegenerative disorders such as dementia, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, and other conditions may experience loss of memory as well as motor impairments. In addition, lack of concentration, feelings of anxiety, loneliness, and fear are just a few of the non-motor symptoms that may afflict individuals at different times and at different stages in the disease process. Guided activities of engagement such as cooking are safe and beneficial to the individual and the caregiver. During our time together, I will use the word individual to identify your loved one or person under your care with a neurodegenerative disorder. I am so pleased to bring you the first of its kind special event. We will be incorporating purposeful engagement and socialization through food and cooking specifically designed for caregivers and the individuals they care for. I'm Melissa Bernstein, occupational therapist, food blogger, author, and chef. We are currently in what my husband, Dr. David Bernstein, and I affectionately call our Power of Five Test Kitchen, located in our home. The concept sprouted from Dr. B's book, The Power of Five, the ultimate formula for longevity and remaining youthful, describing the 5 S's we need to do more of or less of for healthy aging. We need more sleep, more sweat, and more socialization, and less stress and sweets. The sweets S represents the realm of healthy eating, as described in part 2 of the book, Putting Healthy Eating to Practice. This section provides sample menus, recipes for healthy eating, advocating a Mediterranean lifestyle. Eating for your health is very important for anyone fighting a disease, and especially when cooking with individuals with neurodegenerative disorders. Research has shown a diet high in protein, low in carbohydrate, and little or no sugar provides the most favorable outcomes. You might be asking yourself, why has an occupational therapist been asked to lead this event? The answer is, this is exactly the essence of occupational therapy. What we do as healthcare professionals, we help people across their lifespan to engage and participate in the things they need or want to do through therapeutic use of everyday activities of daily living, ADLs, dressing, bathing, personal hygiene, functional mobility, cooking, eating, and feeding. The occupation of living. Today's program will focus on care of others and meal preparation. Both of these higher level ADLs encourage participation and engagement. Food is powerful. It comforts. It is a modulator of the mind-body connection. It brings people together. It stimulates our senses, taste, smell, vision, and hearing. Food facilitates past reminiscence and is a powerful way of bringing memories back to life. Using music during activities can instantaneously bring us back to those special recipes our family cooked, triggering the memories of what, when, and where we experienced that meal. Therefore, using food and cooking and eating with individuals with neurodegenerative disorders is beneficial on many levels. Here are a few general pre-cooking must-dos before we get started. Be sure bathroom needs are met. Always wash hands before food prep. You and your cooking partner may want to wear disposable gloves, latex and allergy-free, during prep and handling of food. Hair should be pulled back if necessary. Always use compassionate cueing techniques during any activity with individuals. The cornerstones are respect and safety. Use an apron if available to protect clothing during the cooking process. My #1 rule in cooking is always be prepared. With this program, I encourage using a person-centered approach, especially for caregivers doing a cooking activity with individuals with neurodegenerative disorders. I'd like to introduce my cooking partner, Shelley. She has Parkinson's disease. We have been friends for over 35 years, and we love to cook together. I am so pleased to have her with me today to demonstrate collaboration between caregiver and a person with neurodegenerative disorder here in the Power of Five Test Kitchen. I completed a functional skills checklist with Shelley earlier to incorporate her needs for for a meaningful cooking experience. Let's get cooking. Today we are cooking cheese and vegetable quesadillas. We have our mise en place, which is French for everything in its place. Here in front we have cheese, we have onions and mushrooms, and then we also have the oil for cooking the tortillas. So I'm going to have Shelley start with the onions and chopping the vegetables. And I wanted to ask you what utensil did you think was going to be the best for you? This one's light-weighted, this one's a regular paring knife, and this one is called a rocker knife. And this one offers stability to those who may have decreased wrist mobility or may have some weakness or even some tremors. So which one would you like to think would be best for you to try?
Oh, I think I'll try this.
Okay, so the special paring board that I have here has corners that you can stabilize the vegetables, such as your mushrooms, or it also can really grab hold of your vegetables with these prongs that are sticking out. So we're going to use that because then that will help Shelley a little bit with her stability. So she's going to start cutting. We're going to do probably a little bit smaller pieces once you get that cut. Okay, good. Do you like that knife?
Yeah, it has really good movement in it.
Okay, all right. Now be careful of your fingers.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, let's go away from the, let's turn the board a little bit here. No, it's not. All right. And let's go ahead and do it that way. That's good. And this way, watch your tips of your fingers. Okay. Very good. Okay. And we're going to move this aside, and then we're going to just go ahead and chop this. And I'm going to let you try the other knife and see how you like that. How does that work for
Very
you?
smooth.
Okay. And she's able to stabilize the vegetable while she's cutting. So it's very important that you do remember safety with your knives and your utensils. And also if standing is a better place for her, or we do have a seat here available in case she gets tired. But you could also pull a chair up to the counter and someone could easily cut sitting down. So we've gone ahead, and I'm going to have you just sit for just a minute and rest while we do part 2 here.
Okay.
And I wanted to go ahead and show you a little bit about some of these other adaptive equipment that we have. This is for folks that may need extra grasp, or even someone that has difficulty with mobility of their wrist, or does not have any grasp at all. And then the larger another one for grasp, but that's a regular delivery of the food with the fork. And then these are weighted. These are very heavy spoons, and these are good for someone that has tremors. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the stove top. Let that heat up a little bit. Okay, are you ready to get back to work? Okay, come a little bit closer to me. And we're going to go ahead and pour just a little bit of the oil into the pan. Just a little bit, not the whole thing. Okay, great. All right. I'm just going to move this around a little bit. I'm just going to move you over a little bit. There you go. Good. It's very important that you have everything really in its place for when you're cooking, and be very well prepared. This is going to take a couple minutes to heat up. And let me have that for just a second. And let's talk a little bit about things that you like to cook with your mom. Were there things that you enjoyed cooking? Did you ever make a quesadilla with your mom, or were there things that you really enjoyed to cook with your mom?
Oh, I never made a quesadilla, but I did make chicken soup with my mom.
Oh,
And we put all kinds of vegetables in there with the chicken. And I have very good memories of that.
Oh, good. So what age were you when you started cooking those vegetables?
Oh, we
And
started
making the
at
soup.
probably about 8 or 9.
Wow.
Was able to do a couple things, and then I slowly learned to be able to do it myself. So I have those memories now.
And was that a really special recipe that you had really
Oh,
great
yes.
memories about?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Was there certain times of year or certain holidays or things that you used to make that soup?
Oh, we would just make it every week, just about.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
Great.
lovely.
So was there anything memorable about that cooking experience with your mom? Additionally, like, did you guys play music? What kinds of things do you recall about the actual experience of cooking that soup?
Oh, as a matter of fact, we did play music. My mom liked jazz. She liked that New Orleans jazz. We put that on in the background. So I have very happy memories. Just even when I hear the music, I think of those times.
Very good. Okay, good. So I think we're heated up now, so we're ready to go ahead and take one of the, take one of those and put that in. Okay. Very good. So you can make these tortillas either on a cooktop or you can actually make these in the oven, just on a regular sheet pan. Put it all together and you can bake it at 350 if that would be easier to pre-prepare the quesadillas and then just pop them in the oven. They don't need very long in the oven, maybe 5 to 8 minutes. You can also make a smaller version with the small tortillas, and you can actually put those in the toaster oven. So it's a very versatile kind of recipe to make and really very easy and simplistic. Okay, I think we're going to flip that one over. Very good. Okay, so we're going to use the 2 tortilla method because I think it's easier and you actually get more pieces out of it. The other way to do it is actually to put all the vegetables in and just flip it over, fold it over. So we're going to go ahead and use the 2 tortilla method. Okay, so I think we might be ready to put some vegetables on there now. Good, very nice. Oops, okay. And we have these onions right here, Shelley.
Okay.
And we've got the cheese, and you can use any kind of cheese that you like. Some people like to go ahead and pre-cook the vegetables, like the onions and mushrooms. You could actually saute them ahead of time if you want to, and then just put them on top and then just wait for the cheese to melt. Sometimes it's a little bit easier to do it that way, but then that adds another step in the process. So if you have someone who's higher level, you may want to do that. Otherwise, the 2 tortilla method works. Okay, we're going to put this one on top. Just going to layer it on top, and we're going to let it kind of cook a little bit. And I'm just going to cover it for just a few minutes while we're waiting for that to cook. And I wanted to ask you about your children and what you like to make with them.
Oh, well, I have 3 grandchildren, and we've made cookies before, and it's just fun.
Yeah. So are they able to help with the different parts of the cooking?
They're very little, so.
So you're able to organize all of the pre-planning for that cooking experience with the kids?
Yes, yes. We get everything ready.
Uh-huh. And how old are they? What's the oldest?
The oldest is 6.
Okay.
And we have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Wow. Wow. So that 6-year-old, I think, is,
Yes.
you're making memories with your 6-year-old
Yes.
granddaughter.
Yes.
That's lovely.
Someday we'll teach them how to make soup.
There you go. That's on the list to make them soup. Okay. So I think this is probably ready. So we're just going to go ahead and press that down, just scoot in a little bit. There you go. The other thing that you want to do is make sure, can I
Sure.
go over? I'm just going to go on this side of you. Is if she needs the stability of, she can use the counter to stabilize her body. And she go 1, 2, 3, flip. All right. And also you can add some guidance in the back. You know, have a belt, make sure there's a belt on your loved one if you feel that they're going to need that extra support of the stability of standing for a longer period of time. How's it look?
I think it's looking good.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and put that right on the plate if you want to go ahead and do that.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Okay, beautiful. Okay, so we're going to always remember to turn off the stove, that button right there. Oop, one more time. Okay, great. So we're going to let that cool down. And we're going to just let this settle for just a moment. And we're going to go ahead and then slice it with the pizza cutter. We're just, well, let me get a mitt for you. These little mitts are very helpful. So I kind of use them like this. Do you want to use that or do you want me to?
Why don't you put your hand there?
Okay,
A little shaky today.
okay. Okay, and then we can just turn the plate. There you go. Very good. And here's our finished product. And we had made guacamole, salsa, and sour cream to dip our delicious quesadillas in. And I think we're going to put on some music. So Shelley, what kind of music did you like when you were cooking?
Oh, I love Beatle music.
Ah, the Beatles.
Yes, they were great.
Very
And
good.
it brings back good memories for me.
So it's great to remember those kinds of things and even to play music if it's meaningful and if it's not too
did we lose it?
distracting when you're cooking. So let's go ahead and start with making our virgin margaritas. We have our mise en place, we have our ice cubes, we also have some lemon juice, lime juice, club soda, and it calls for sugar, although we're trying to reduce our sugar. So I'm going to use this stevia clear, which actually is very good for sweetening and does not have an aftertaste, so that they will be sweet and tart together. We're going to go ahead and use a blender, although you can use any kind of blender. This is a bullet, but you can use any kind of blender. So Shelley, why don't you go ahead and start with the club soda. We'll pour that in. Okay, and the lemon juice.
Got it.
Okay, the lime juice. Okay, and we're just going to throw one little extra lemon in there, just because I love lemon.
The whole thing?
The whole thing. Throw it right in
All right.
there. Okay, and then we're just going to do some drops of this. Let me open this for you. There you go. So I'm thinking like maybe 6 drops. Okay, might need a little, maybe one more, maybe 1 or 2 more. I think we tried it last time. It wasn't quite as sweet as we wanted it to be. Great, okay. Very good. All right. And so we're just going to throw the ice in now. I'm going to stabilize this for you. There we go. And we're going to put the top on.
All right.
Good job. All right. Real tight because it leaks a little bit. All right. And here we go. Ready? You want to put it on? Have the honors?
Okay.
It's that sound that we love. Okay, so there are 2 kinds of margaritas to make. There's this kind that we just made, which is frozen, or you can just make it on the rocks. And we've also, the salt is also a signature of margaritas. We've chosen not to have the salt. But So there's flexibility with this. We're just gonna put a little lemon on the outside here.
Nice.
We're gonna pour them. And we'll be ready to toast. Can you help me with that? I'll hold the glass. There you go. Woo! Here's the second one. All right, here they are. And I say, toast.
Beautiful.
Delicious.
Very good.
Very delicious. Let's review the guides that I referenced earlier. Skills Inventory for Cooperative Cooking, a skills checklist, including a mini survey of food likes and dislikes. This is useful to get a baseline of one's motor abilities and attending to tasks or steps of a recipe. A mini cookbook of recipes that includes compassionate cueing techniques, types of assistant levels during cooking, and reminders of the basics of collaboration between caregiver and individual in the kitchen. Examples of some of the adaptive utensils and kitchen gadgets that may be beneficial for assisted meal prep or dining. Let's review the basics of collaboration between caregiver and the individual. Before a cooking activity, perform the skills and abilities inventory, including likes and dislikes. Keep the recipe appropriate for the level of the individual. Break the recipe down into bite-sized steps. Patiently explain and describe with the individual what foods will be used to prepare the recipe and how you're going to take one step at a time. Pre-prepare parts of the recipe if necessary. Avoid overwhelming or frustration. This is very necessary for those individuals who may have shortened attention spans or demonstrate apprehension or even fear. Encourage involvement in all steps of the preparation, even if they are unable to assist. The engagement at any level is meaningful. Stay focused on the individual's physical and mental engagement throughout the purposeful activity. Remember safety in the kitchen. Caregivers may have to handle some of the parts of the cooking activity. Caregivers must keep an eye out for fatigue and diminished attention. Adjust as necessary to maintain engagement. Consider and plan the ambiance and conversation starters. This will enhance the cooking and dining experience, making it more enjoyable, memorable, and fun. Once the food is completed, you will be ready to enjoy the food of your labor. Take time and talk about the making of the recipe and what were the parts that they enjoyed most. Reinforce reminiscing, purposeful engagement, and socialization. Consider adding music to the activity. Always cook and dine with dignity, and make it so much fun, you're going to want to plan your next cooking experience. I hope you have enjoyed our time in the Power of 5 Test Kitchen. I have demonstrated caregiver essentials for participation and engagement when cooking with the individual in your care. I know it may be daunting to do a simple cooking activity with someone in your care. However, the potential benefits outweigh the apprehension. You will be pleasantly surprised how fulfilling this activity may be for both of you, especially if you take it slow, step by step, and have fun.
Welcome back. I hope
That
you
was fabulous.
Thank you. I hope you all really enjoyed watching the video as much as we enjoyed filming it. As you experienced in the video, you saw the steps outlining collaborative with the caregiver and the care recipient in the kitchen. The skills inventory that I talked about was designed as a simple checklist for the caregiver. It provides a means for the physical abilities of the care recipient before choosing the recipe to cook. Let's look at 5 pointers for success to enjoy simple cooking, just to review with your care recipient.
Great.
Hold on. And, oops. Oops, backwards. There we go. Okay. This technology, it's great when it works, isn't it?
Yeah.
So discuss the purpose for the cooking activity. Go slow, take your time, and break the instructions down into small bite-sized steps to enhance the organization and promote the fun and a peaceful engagement. Consider preparing guided topics for conversation, such as talk about your family, sports, or the current events. What does the individual like to do? That can be incorporated and help with to enhance the experience. What is their favorite recipe and their favorite foods? You're going to go a lot further if you're cooking something that they really like, so that they can enjoy the fruits of their labor. And number 5 is have them engage them in choosing a recipe together, so that they are fully engaged from the beginning, and even planning out what things do they need to buy, what kinds of things do they need to do in the process of cooking the recipe. Okay. I'd like to share a quote from the author of Dementia Beyond Disease, Dr. G. Allen Power. This really kind of resonated with me. Those living with dementia can take an active role in their own care. They can live purposefully as long as there is help for their care partners. So we are not seeing that, David. On this. I'm not seeing that. Okay. Are you seeing my slides, Linda? I'm sorry.
No, I just see you.
Okay, that's not good. All right, hold on 1 second, please.
Okay.
Go back to sharing. And we lost the share here. Share screen. There we go. Share.
Someone said when you were doing that little cooking class just now, you made their mouth water.
I get that all the time.
Yeah.
I know. And you know, quesadillas are like the best. They're
Yeah.
so versatile. You can do so much with them.
Right.
So it's my go-to, you know?
Yeah.
All right, so let's go back here real quick. There's our quote from Dr. Power. Okay, so we're good now. So I got some permission from the author of The Power of 5 to talk about the 5 C's for senior care environment. But first, I want to share that as an occupational therapist, I feel that our focus on the physical, mental health, and well-being of the caregiver translates directly to their health and wellness and of the care recipient. And as I mentioned, I'm able to kind of have a little literary license here with The Power of 5. And I developed my own formula for the senior care, all starting with the letter C. We're really big on initials here in our family. Using these 5 words can help to weave a strategy that helps to meet the crucial needs of the caregiver and the care recipient, no matter where they reside. The first is community. And today's senior care environment needs to be structured in a way to provide every person, no matter what their cognitive ability, to have a purposeful life. Investing time and resources in a team approach will enhance the care. Number 2, care. Care must be focused on an individualized activities for the care recipient to foster that person-centered approach. To optimize the engagement means that the caregiver must take the time and have the tools needed for successful and a fun activity. Number 3, communication. Communicate with the care recipient to better understand their current needs and abilities. Then base a meaningful activity at that level. Number 4, collaboration. Partnerships between the care team, family, healthcare professionals, all with a common goal to ensure a meaningful existence for the care recipient. Number 5, connection. Utilize resources such as those you are hearing from at this conference, and attending support groups, whether virtual or live, will enhance the care recipient's connection with their spouse, partner, family, and friends. I want you to keep these 5 C's in mind, as I hope they will be a guide to you as you monitor the care provided to the care recipient. And I wanted to also talk a little bit about my cookbook, which I'm sorry, Linda, I didn't get a copy for you, and I apologize. I will get a copy to you.
Thank you.
And I just want to show you what it looks like, and there's a picture on the screen. But this cookbook, really, I was doing a full-on cookbook, and I kind of paused when we started talking about how can we adapt what I'm doing to caregivers and do something that is beneficial for them. So what I did is I put together a small sampling, maybe 45 recipes of brain healthy recipes. They all have Melissa's modifications, what I call is my adaptations to recipes to meet the lifestyle eating of all different people, whether they're pescatarians, whether they, don't eat dairy, whatever that might be. Those modifications help to adjust every single recipe based on those needs and how they eat. There's my abilities inventory checklist that I talked about is also in there. There's compassionate cueing techniques, assistance levels to promote independent, and the steps to ensure a safe and comfortable environment in the kitchen. So I'm very proud of it, and I hope that the caregivers will enjoy what we have put together there. And
I think it's the perfect Thanksgiving or holiday gift.
it is, but there's more.
Okay.
There's more. First, I really want to give you so much thanks, Linda, for what you put together. And David and I really are just, blown away with this 3-day conference. And I know it took a lot of effort, and we're so grateful to be part of this. And so we encourage you to go to the website, but I designed and published a brand new mini Power of 5 Test Kitchen Cookbook with holiday recipes, especially to offer our attendees today. So if they, the web address, it's a little tricky, but we can post it somewhere. It's a long address, so they made it into a bit.ly, which is, you can see right here on the bottom of the screen.
If you email it to me, then anybody that wants it, I can send it to them.
Oh, I just lost the slide. Hold on. There we go. We're back.
But if you email the links to me, then I can send it to anybody that wants them.
Okay, great. And then also we are offering a discount on all of our books in the library in our e-store. So that includes, Dr. B's books, the cookbook, the journal, all of the things that we have put together for our readers.
We have senior driving dilemmas.
And we have senior driving dilemmas for people that are dealing with taking the keys away from
Yes,
their loved
I
ones.
love that book personally.
And that it's a small guide for families to really, really hone in on what can they do and how can they do it in a creative way, because it is probably the most difficult thing. And what do you say, Dr. B, about people would rather talk about?
Oh, yeah, they'd rather talk about funerals than taking away the keys when the family.
Yeah,
Two tough topics.
Yeah, exactly. But they rather talk about their funeral arrangements. So I just thought that was pretty interesting. Do we have any questions out there, Linda?
No, just mostly comments about mouth drooling, and they liked some of the tools you had. Oh, well, one woman said that she used to try to cook with her mom.
Yes.
And her mom was always so very nervous. And then one day they just started playing music, and now when she cooks with her mom, she's not nervous anymore.
Perfect.
So,
Perfect.
yeah,
Perfect. And I, if it's not too distracting, certainly music plays a huge role in cooking and what we do. It just brings us back.
Yeah.
So, you know, I want to thank you again, Dr. B, and I want to thank
Thank
you
you.
again for participating in this. And I will send you the information, Linda, that you can get it out to our viewers. And certainly reach out to me, reach out to Dr. B. We're happy to continue to answer questions, you know, for your listeners and for any caregiver out there. I know you've got lots of people that connect with you, and we're happy to be resources for them.
Thank you so much, my friends. As I say, it's the power of two over there.
Thank you.
We'll talk soon. Have a delicious day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. Wow, I loved that session. I loved that session. There was so much to learn there. I am just so humbled by the fabulous speakers that we have in this conference. It just blows me away.